A Gothic cathedral holds more secrets than a holy book. These stone giants are not just places of worship but complex puzzles, their spires and arches embedded with hidden codes that reshaped architecture forever. Medieval builders concealed messages in sacred geometry and stained glass, creating a silent language of stone. By the end of this, you will be able to look at any great cathedral and see the revolutionary ideas hidden in plain sight. Why did they risk their reputations to encode forbidden knowledge, and what lost techniques allowed them to build the impossible? What does it truly take to build a message that lasts 1,000 years? The heavy stone walls of Romanesque churches felt like fortresses designed for protection and penance. Then came a revolution, not with weapons, but with light. In the 12th century, just outside the city of Paris, a man named Abbot Suger looked at his dark abbey church of Saint Denis and envisioned something entirely new. He did not want a building that made you feel the weight of the earth, but one that lifted your soul towards the heavens. This was the genesis of the Gothic style, a conscious rebellion against the shadow. It was an architectural declaration that divinity was not found in gloom, but in luminous, soaring space. This shift was far more than an aesthetic preference. As scholars like Otto von Simpson have explained, it was a profound theological statement. The very structure of the church was to become a medium for experiencing the divine, a physical pathway to a spiritual truth. This ambition was fueled by a changing world. Europe was experiencing a new era of urban prosperity and intellectual fervor, with the rise of scholasticism encouraging a logical, almost mathematical, inquiry into faith. People were no longer satisfied with simply being told about God. They wanted to feel His presence. The Gothic cathedral was the answer. It transformed architecture from mere construction into an embodied philosophy. The intention to encode deep meaning into the very fabric of a building was born right here, from a desire to make the intangible suddenly, breathtakingly tangible. To achieve this, the builders needed a new language, a precise and universal system that could translate this lofty vision into stone and glass. They found it in the ancient, and some believed divine, principles of geometry. That master mason's compass was not just a tool, it was a key. With it, he unlocked a language of lines and curves that medieval thinkers believed was written into the very fabric of creation. This is the first and most fundamental hidden code, the silent architecture within the architecture, sacred geometry. Builders did not design cathedrals like Chartres with random, convenient measurements. They laid them out using precise, repeating ratios like the golden ratio and the square root of 2. These were not merely mathematical curiosities. They were seen as divine proportions, echoes of the perfect order God used to shape the cosmos. To stand in a cathedral built on these principles was to stand inside a manifestation of cosmic harmony. As the scholar Robert Lawler expressed, geometry was considered the archetype of the world's beauty, and the builders took this to heart. They embedded these ratios everywhere. The width of the nave might relate to its height through the golden ratio, creating a sublimely pleasing sense of balance. The diameter of a majestic rose window would be determined by the same geometric logic that structured the entire floor plan. This was a mathematical sermon in stone, telling every worshipper that the same order that holds the stars in place was present right here, in this sacred space. This invisible framework of lines and angles was the essential foundation. It set the stage for the next breathtaking layer of the code, one that would use this perfect geometry to conduct a symphony of light. But that symphony of light required a new kind of instrument. The jewel-like windows that transformed stone into a vision of heaven were only possible because of a third revolutionary code, the structural secret that allowed walls to practically dissolve. This was the radical shift from thick, load-bearing walls to a skeletal system of support. The secret lay in the pointed arch, the ribbed vault, and the flying buttress. Individually, these were clever innovations, but together they formed an architectural revolution. The rounded Romanesque arch pushed its weight outward and downward, demanding massive walls and small windows. The Gothic pointed arch, by contrast, channeled that weight more directly downward. This allowed for taller, slenderer piers. Then, builders took this further by creating a stone skeleton. Ribbed vaults, like the exposed bones of the ceiling, carried the weight along their distinct lines, concentrating the forces at specific points. And that is where the true magic happened, outside the building itself. The flying buttress, that iconic stone arm reaching out from the walls, acted as a brace. It caught the outward thrust from the vaults and channeled it safely into the ground. It was an exoskeleton of stone, a brilliant solution that meant the walls themselves were no longer the primary supports. They became mere screens, vast canvases that could be filled with the stained glass that told those luminous stories. This was not just a new way to build, it was a new way to think about space. It was a declaration that solidity was an illusion, and that true strength came from a delicate, intelligent balance of forces. This hidden structural code gave builders the freedom to reach for the sky, creating the towering naves and vast windows that define the Gothic dream. Yet, even with this mastery of structure and light, the most personal and mysterious codes were still to be found, carved in stone by the hands of the artisans themselves. Look up into the ribbed vaults of Amiens Cathedral, and you are not just seeing a ceiling. You are witnessing a stone forest, its branches woven together to lift your gaze and your thoughts toward the heavens. This is the third hidden code, the symbolism carved into the very bones of the building. The pointed arch was never merely a structural improvement over the rounded Romanesque arch. Its form is an arrow, a deliberate gesture that pulls your vision and your spirit upward, a physical expression of human aspiration toward the divine. Then there are the rib vaults overhead. These were understood as more than just the architectural skeleton of the church. They were seen as the ribs of a celestial body, the sacred framework of a space that was itself alive with faith. And those dramatic flying buttresses on the exterior, they completed this symbolic system. They acted as an external armature, a powerful visual metaphor for the divine support that holds everything together, the hidden strength of a belief that makes the impossible seem light and airy. As the architectural historian Jean Boney described it, this was a complete system of symbolic forms. Every line was intended to express a spiritual hierarchy, mapping the path from the earthly realm to salvation. Consider the cross-ribbed vault, where the stone ribs intersect directly over the central space. This was not an accident of design. It served as a perpetual, silent reminder of the crucifixion, its intersecting lines marking the spiritual coordinates of the church and centering the entire building on that foundational event. Every curve, every intersection was a deliberate choice. The architects were translating abstract theological concepts into physical form, embedding a layer of meaning that transformed mere physical support into a profound spiritual metaphor. This deep integration of form and faith did not stop with the grand structural elements. It flowed downward into the very stone, where an entire world of intricate carvings waited to tell more personal and sometimes more mysterious stories. High above the city, a stone demon stares down from the parapet, its mouth open in a perpetual snarl. This gargoyle is not merely a decoration, it is a stone guardian, a piece of moral theatre carved for every passerby to see. Here we find the fourth hidden code, the language of gargoyles and grotesques. Their monstrous forms, from chimeras to hybrid beasts, served a powerful dual purpose. On a practical level, they were ingenious waterspouts, channeling rainwater away from the delicate stonework through their gaping mouths, but their true function was far more profound. They were apotropaic symbols, believed to ward off evil spirits by confronting them with a visage more terrifying than their own. As the art historian Michael Camille described them, these figures were the marginalia of the cathedral, the chaotic scribbles in the margins of a holy text. They represented the very sins and demons that faith and order were meant to keep at bay. For a largely illiterate population, these grotesques were a vivid, unforgettable visual sermon. A person would look up at a leering demon and be shocked into contemplating their own vices, a stark reminder of the consequences of sin just outside the sanctity of the church walls. Their placement was a code in itself, marking the crucial transition from the sacred, ordered interior to the unpredictable, profane exterior. They were sentinels on the boundary between the holy and the worldly. These stone monsters were not signs of evil, but rather a declaration that evil was understood, named, and kept at a distance. Their silent warnings carved into the skyline lead us to look beyond individual figures to the grandest code of all, the one written in the cathedral's very position on the earth. Beneath your feet, a different kind of map unfolds. While gargoyles guarded the heights, another code was laid into the very floor, a path for the faithful to walk with their own bodies. At the heart of Chartres Cathedral, a great stone labyrinth winds in 11 concentric circles. This is not a maze designed to confuse or trap you. It is a unicursal path, a single, winding route that leads inevitably to a central rosette. This fifth hidden code transforms the abstract journey of the soul into a physical, meditative pilgrimage. For a medieval Christian who could never hope to travel to the Holy Land, walking this path was a powerful substitute, a condensed spiritual quest right inside their local cathedral. Every deliberate step along the winding stone channel was a form of physical prayer, a ritual that mirrored the soul's difficult, twisting journey toward God. As labyrinth scholar Jeff Soward explains, this was an embodied theology, a way to live out the idea that salvation, while arduous, was ultimately assured for those who persisted in faith. The labyrinth's design is a masterpiece of sacred geometry, its path precisely measured and aligned with the cathedral's own axes, often incorporating the same divine ratios that govern the entire structure. It is a microcosm, a miniature model of the ordered universe contained within the church walls. To walk it was to trace a map of divine order with your own feet, to feel the promise of a guided path beneath your soles. This intricate stone coil is more than a pattern. It is a profound architectural secret, a code that makes theology tangible. It speaks of a universe where every twist and turn has purpose, and every journey, no matter how long, leads to a sacred center. This idea of the church as a map of the cosmos did not stop at the floor. It extended to the very ground the cathedral was built upon, anchoring the entire structure to the heavens above and the earth below. That single beam of light piercing the stained glass was not a happy accident. It was a celestial appointment scheduled by the builders centuries in advance. The sixth hidden code transforms these stone structures from static buildings into dynamic cosmic calendars, perfectly aligned with the sun, moon, and stars. The master masons did not just look down at their geometric plans, they looked up at the heavens, encoding astronomical knowledge into the very orientation of the cathedral. The most fundamental alignment is the east-west axis. The altar was almost always placed in the east so that on any given morning, the rising sun would flood the holiest part of the church with light. This was a direct architectural metaphor for Christ as the light of the world, a new dawn for humanity arriving with each new day. But this alignment went far deeper than a simple sunrise. As researchers like John James have meticulously documented, the builders planned for the most significant days of the solar year, the solstices and equinoxes. In Chartres Cathedral, for instance, a specific spot of light from a high window would track across the floor and illuminate a single brass strip embedded in the stone, but only on the summer solstice. This was a luminous marker for the longest day of the year, a secret calendar built into the floor. Other cathedrals feature similar phenomena, where a beam of light would land precisely on a particular statue or altar on a saint's feast day, connecting the celestial event to the liturgical calendar. This created a living liturgy where the architecture itself participated in the worship, a symphony of stone and light conducted by the sun. The cathedral was not just a bridge to heaven, it was a model of the cosmos, its rhythms synchronized with the turning of the celestial spheres. How did they achieve such precision with only medieval tools? The answer lies in the final, and perhaps most abstract code of all, the one written not in stone or light, but in pure number. The number of pillars in a chapel is never a matter of structural convenience. It is a deliberate echo of a heavenly chorus. This is the seventh hidden code, the language of biblical numerology woven directly into the cathedral's bones. For the medieval mind, numbers were not neutral quantities. They were sacred symbols, each carrying a profound spiritual weight drawn directly from Scripture. The number 3 represented the Holy Trinity, a divine mystery made structural. 7 stood for perfection and completion, echoing the 7 days of creation. 12 signified the apostles and the tribes of Israel, a foundation of spiritual community. 40 recalled the days of Christ's fasting and the Israelites' wandering, a period of trial and transformation. This was not a secret code in the modern sense, but a widely understood language of faith. The influential theologian Augustine of Hippo had argued that numbers were a fundamental part of God's creation, a key to unlocking the order and beauty of the universe. The master masons took this philosophy and built it into their stone sermons. Walk through a cathedral and you will find this numerical hymn everywhere. A bay might be divided into 3 distinct vaults, a constant, silent invocation of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. A magnificent stained glass window could be composed of 12 main panels, each one a tribute to an apostle. The very length of the nave might be a precise multiple of a sacred number, ensuring the entire building resonated with divine proportion. This numerical framework created a structure that was more than a building. It was a representation of biblical truth and cosmic harmony, a silent language of faith for those who knew how to read it. And it was upon this solid, numerical skeleton that the masons would often hang more mysterious, more earthy symbols, like the enigmatic face of the Green Man peering out from a bed of stone leaves. Tucked away in a shadowy corner, a stone face stares out, its mouth agape as a cascade of oak leaves and hawthorn berries erupts from within. This is the Green Man, the 8th hidden code, and his message is one of untamed, flourishing life. He is not a saint or an angel, but something far older, a foliate head whose roots reach deep into pre-Christian beliefs about the spirit of the forest. Yet here he is, carved into the very pillars of a Christian cathedral. How did this seemingly pagan symbol find a home in such a holy place? Historians like Kathleen Basford argue that the Church did not simply erase these ancient figures, it absorbed and reinterpreted them. The Green Man was Christianized, his endless cycle of foliage becoming a powerful stone metaphor for the resurrection of Christ and the promise of eternal life for the faithful. He was nature baptized. His placement is itself a clue. You often find him not in the bright central spaces, but in the dimmer aisles, on misericord seats, or in the dense foliage of a capital. He inhabits the margins, a constant, whispering reminder that the divine order is not confined to the soaring vaults above. It pulses through every living thing, from the grandest oak tree to the most humble vine. The cathedral, in embracing the Green Man, encoded a revolutionary idea for its time, that the natural world was not separate from God's grace, but was itself a sacred text filled with divine presence. This stone face assures us that death is always followed by rebirth, that life is an unstoppable force, and that the divine blueprint includes the wild, green heart of the earth. This profound connection to the materials of the earth itself leads to the final, most foundational code of all, the one written not in symbol or number, but in the very substance of the mountain and the forest. Run your fingers over a weathered stone block in an old cathedral, and you might feel it, a faint, deliberate scratch. These are not the random marks of time, they are the personal signatures of the artisans, the ninth and most human hidden code. Each stonemason had his own unique symbol, a simple yet distinct combination of lines and angles he would carve into the stone he had shaped. This mark was his guarantee of quality and his claim for payment, a permanent record of his skill and his responsibility. But these marks were far more than just practical accounting tools. As the historian John Harvey revealed, they formed a secret language of identity and affiliation. A particular mark could tell a fellow mason which lodge you trained with, or even hint at your level of expertise within the craft's strict hierarchy. This system of symbols transformed the entire cathedral from a single, anonymous monument into a vast collaborative tapestry, woven together by the hands of countless individuals, each of whom left a tiny, permanent piece of themselves behind. This was a brotherhood bound by shared secrets. The guilds guarded their advanced knowledge of geometry and structural physics with intense secrecy, passing it down not in books but through initiation rites and oral tradition. The true methods for calculating the thrust of an arch or the perfect proportion of a pillar were closely held mysteries, ensuring the prestige and authority of the craft. This deeply personal layer of coding, this fusion of individual pride and collective secrecy, reveals the cathedral not just as a spiritual statement, but as a monumental record of human endeavor. To understand the full depth of this achievement, we must finally look beyond the stone and the symbols to the very system of knowledge that trained the master masons' minds. The master mason's education was a journey into the very order of creation itself. He was not trained as a modern engineer, but as a philosopher of number and form, schooled in the 7 liberal arts. The most advanced of these were the quadrivium, the fourfold path of arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. This was the 10th and perhaps most profound hidden code, the intellectual framework that made all the others possible. For the medieval mind, these were not separate subjects, but interconnected lenses for perceiving divine harmony. Arithmetic was the study of pure number, the invisible essence of quantity. Geometry gave number a body in space, translating abstract ratios into lines, angles, and shapes. Music explored the relationships between numbers as heard in harmonic intervals. And astronomy mapped these same mathematical laws onto the grand scale of the cosmos. To build a cathedral was to weave these 4 disciplines into a single stone tapestry. The proportions of a nave's height to its width might be calculated using the same perfect ratios that produce a harmonious chord in music, creating what the poet Goethe would later call a frozen music. You could not hear it, but you could feel its perfect balance, a silent symphony resonating in the space around you. The entire floor plan was laid out with geometric precision, using the compass and square to manifest cosmic order on the ground. And the building's orientation, its alignment with the solstice sun, was its direct conversation with astronomy. This was not merely decoration, it was a declaration that to understand the universe, you had to build a small, perfect version of it. The cathedral became a three-dimensional textbook, a physical model of the medieval world, where every measurement, every angle, and every alignment was a deliberate act of philosophical and theological expression. By encoding the quadrivium into stone, the builders asserted that architecture was the highest of the sciences, a sacred art that mirrored the mind of God. The vibrant reds and blues of a great rose window do more than tell a story of saints. They may also be a secret map for the ultimate transformation. This 11th hidden code is alchemical symbolism, the idea that the cathedral itself was a vast stone representation of the alchemist's great work, the quest to turn base lead into perfect spiritual gold, the legendary philosopher's stone. Some interpreters, like Louis Charpentier, see the rose window not only as a symbol of the Virgin Mary, but as an alchemical mandala. Its intricate patterns and radiating segments can be read as a depiction of the different stages of this sacred process, a circular diagram of spiritual refinement. Look closely at the carvings and you might find other clues. The image of a pelican piercing its own breast to feed its young with its blood was a common Christian symbol for Christ's sacrifice. But in the language of alchemy, it also represented the coveted red stone, the final, perfected substance. The Ouroboros, that ancient serpent swallowing its own tail, appears in stone, symbolizing both the eternal cycle of death and rebirth and the alchemist's goal of unity and perfection. The entire decades-long act of building the cathedral mirrors the alchemical journey. The rough, unformed stone hauled from the quarry was the prima materia, the primal, chaotic base matter. The master mason, with his compass and square, was like the alchemist in his laboratory, applying sacred geometry and fire, in this case the fire of faith and intellect, to that raw material. The careful cutting, the precise setting, the final polishing, all of it was a slow, deliberate transmutation. The finished cathedral, gleaming with stained glass and soaring to the heavens, was the ultimate product, the spiritual gold made manifest in limestone and leaded light. It was a testament that human effort, guided by hidden knowledge, could participate in a divine process of perfection. This esoteric layer suggests the cathedral was designed as a three-dimensional guide to enlightenment, its very construction a ritual. To orchestrate such a profound transformation required more than esoteric symbols. It demanded a practical and deeply guarded set of instructions. That wooden template in the mason's hand was the final link in a chain of secrets. It was cut from a pattern drawn not on a small piece of parchment, but across an entire floor. This is the 12th hidden code, the world of tracing floors and templates, the practical magic that turned sacred geometry into solid stone. In a sealed room, often high in the cathedral's loft, the master mason would spread a layer of plaster or prepare a smooth stone floor. Here, he would etch the full-scale, life-size designs for the cathedral's most complex elements. This was the tracing floor, the secret blueprint. Using only a compass, a straight edge, and a length of string, he would lay out the precise geometry for a soaring arch, the intricate curves of a rib vault, or the delicate tracery of a rose window. These lines were the direct translation of the divine ratios into a builder's guide. As historian Lon Shelby revealed, this practical, hands-on geometry was the true engine of the Gothic Revolution. The complex intersections of stone that seemed so impossible were first worked out here in these sprawling, temporary drawings. Once the full-size design was perfect, carpenters would make precise wooden templates from the lines etched in the floor. These templates were then handed to the stonecutters, who would trace their shapes onto blocks of limestone, ensuring that every single piece, carved by different men in different workshops, would fit together perfectly on site. This system guaranteed the consistency and breathtaking accuracy we see across these vast structures. And then, to protect the lodge's most valuable secrets, the tracing floor was often destroyed, its plaster scraped away or its stone surface planed smooth, leaving no trace for rival builders. The survival of a few, like the one in the upper levels of York Minster, gives us a breathtaking window into their world. To stand on such a floor is to see the ghost of the design process, to understand that the cathedral's beauty was born not from random genius, but from a rigorous, repeatable, and brilliantly practical coding system. This hidden workshop ensured that the vision in the master mason's mind could be replicated by hundreds of hands, creating a unity of form that feels almost supernatural. It was this meticulous, step-by-step process that gave these stone giants their impossible stability, a structural integrity that modern engineers are only now beginning to fully decode. From the outside, a Gothic cathedral reveals its true skeleton. Those stone arms leaping away from the walls are not mere decorations, they are the 13th code, a brilliant engineering solution to a seemingly impossible problem. These flying buttresses perform a kind of architectural gymnastics, catching the immense outward thrust generated by the soaring vaults inside and channeling it through the air, down into massive stone piers rooted deep in the earth. This was a radical reinvention of structural support. It transformed the building from a heavy, wall-dependent box into a lightweight, skeletal frame. The entire system operates on a delicate balance of thrust and counter-thrust, a push met by an equal and opposite push. Because the buttresses handled the lateral forces, the walls were freed from their load-bearing duty. They became thin curtains of stone, vast openings that could be filled with the stained glass that told the stories of faith. Modern engineers using sophisticated computer analysis have discovered something astonishing about these medieval designs. They often operate with breathtakingly minimal safety margins, meaning the builders calculated the forces with such precision that the structure uses just enough material to stand, and not an ounce more. The specific angle of a buttress flight, the subtle curve of its spine, these were not aesthetic choices. They were carefully calibrated to redirect tons of force along the most efficient path possible. This hidden structural logic is a code of physical law written in limestone, a perfect marriage of necessity and philosophy. It embodies a profound idea that true strength does not always come from being thick and solid, but from intelligent design, from external support, and from a perfectly balanced system. This engineering marvel made the Gothic dream a reality, allowing stone to defy its own weight and reach for the heavens. That single spire of Strasbourg Cathedral is a stone prayer, a silent scream of ambition aimed directly at the heavens. This relentless drive for height is the 14th hidden code, a message carved not in symbols but in sheer, breathtaking dimension. Every foot of stone piled upon stone was a physical expression of spiritual aspiration, a community's collective desire to bridge the immense gap between the human and the divine. The spire itself, often the final, crowning achievement of a century's labor, was more than an architectural feat. It was a symbolic finger, a permanent gesture pointing every eye and every heart upward. As the theologian Honorius of Autun expressed, the high vaults were consciously designed to represent the heavens themselves, a space that would pull the soul from its earthly concerns and compel it to ascend in contemplation. This was not about building the tallest structure for the sake of pride. It was a profound theological lesson rendered in limestone, teaching that the path to God was one of constant, upward striving. The staggering technical challenge of constructing these spires with their intricate stone frameworks and delicate openwork further embedded this message. To see such a fragile-looking stone needle stand for centuries was to witness a miracle of human ingenuity, a testament that faith, when combined with sacred knowledge, could truly achieve the impossible. This vertical axis of aspiration perfectly complements the horizontal journey of the labyrinth. Where the labyrinth maps the soul's winding path across the earth, the spire charts its direct, daring flight toward the sky. Together, they form a complete spiritual coordinate system, mapping the human journey within the cosmic order of the heavenly Jerusalem. The floor plan of Canterbury Cathedral is a map of a promise. Its long nave forms the body of the cross, its transepts stretch out like arms, and its rounded eastern end, the chevet, cradles the high altar. This is the 15th hidden code, an eschatological blueprint where the entire building becomes a scaled-down model of the heavenly Jerusalem from the Book of Revelation. Every element was designed to correspond to that vision of a perfect celestial city. The shimmering walls were not just limestone, they stood for the jasper walls of paradise. The grand portals were more than entrances, they echoed the 12 gates, each a single pearl. The very path a worshipper walked was a symbolic street of gold. This architectural eschatology transformed the space from a place of worship into a foretaste of paradise itself. The three main doors often consciously represented the Holy Trinity, a divine welcome. The 12 pillars lining the nave were not just structural supports, they embodied the 12 apostles, the spiritual foundation of the New Jerusalem. For a medieval pilgrim, walking the length of the nave was not a simple stroll. It was a profound symbolic journey, a procession through the very streets of heaven, an experience crafted to offer tangible hope and reinforce the ultimate promise of salvation. This macro-level vision of a celestial city, however, was funded by a much more earthly reality. The micro-level counterpart to this heavenly blueprint is found in the intricate coats of arms and heraldic symbols that literally paid for this dream. That vibrant tapestry of lions and lilies in the glass is more than decoration. It is the cathedral's financial ledger, written in a code of color and symbol. These heraldic shields belong to the bishops, nobles, and merchant guilds who poured their wealth into the building project, and they form the 16th hidden code, the language of patronage. Placing your coat of arms in the house of God was a powerful act, a dual declaration of worldly status and spiritual devotion. It was a form of spiritual insurance, a public plea for the prayers of all who entered, ensuring the donor's soul would be remembered long after their death. As the historian Michael explains, this was a piety of patronage, where financial support was visually immortalized as a perpetual act of faith. The placement of these symbols is a secret map of the cathedral's social history. You might find a wealthy merchant's shield in a window he funded, a knight's emblem carved into the choir stall where he prayed, or a guild symbol set into the floor tiles, marking the space where their members worship. This was not vanity, but a complex social contract rendered in stone and light. It reveals the worldly machinery, the intricate network of finance and social ambition that was absolutely essential to realizing this spiritual vision. The cathedral, in this light, becomes a perfect fusion of the sacred and the secular, a building that could not exist without the complex interplay between the material and the divine. This same principle of intentional design extends beyond the visual into the very sound that filled the sacred space. The very stone of the cathedral was designed to sing. Step inside during a service and you would not just hear a choir, you would experience sound transformed. The Gregorian chant did not simply stop at your ears, it swelled and lingered, each note blending into the next to create a continuous, shimmering curtain of sound. This was the 17th hidden code, an acoustic engineering that gave human worship a supernatural quality. The high, hard vaults and vast, flat walls of stone were not just structural or symbolic choices, they were sonic ones. These surfaces reflected sound waves back into the space again and again, creating a long reverberation time that could last for many seconds. This sonic blur was not a flaw, it was the entire point. In that sustained echo, the individual voices of the monks dissolved into a single, unified body of sound, a perfect auditory metaphor for the eternal and unchanging nature of God. There was no beginning or end to the sacred music, only an everlasting present. Modern acoustic studies of buildings like the Abbey of St. Denis confirm what medieval worshippers felt in their bones. The architecture amplified certain frequencies, giving the human voice a richer, more resonant tone that seemed to come from everywhere at once. This crafted soundscape was designed to pull you out of your own head, to quiet the internal chatter, and draw you into a deeply contemplative state. You were not just listening to a song about divinity, you were immersed within the sound of it. This coding of sound worked in perfect harmony with the coding of light and space. The ethereal glow through the stained glass met the unearthly resonance of the chant, creating a multi-sensory immersion that was the ultimate goal of Gothic design. Every aspect of the experience, from what you saw to what you heard, was carefully choreographed to guide the soul toward a single, overwhelming encounter with the sacred. And this entire symphony of stone and sound was conducted according to a final, grand code, a hidden calendar that marked not just the hours, but the very seasons of salvation. The path a priest walked during High Mass was a map of faith itself. He began in the sacristy, the quiet room where sacred vessels were kept, and then processed with solemn steps down the choir, the domain of the clergy, and finally approached the high altar, the spiritual heart of the entire building. This precise route is the 18th hidden code, a liturgical pathway that gave physical form to the most sacred rituals. The entire cathedral was organized like a spiritual machine, its parts engineered for specific ceremonial functions. The choir, separated by an ornate screen, was a holy of holies for the monks and canons. The vast nave was the space for the laity, the everyday people who watched the mystery unfold from a distance. And the radiating ambulatory, that clever curved corridor behind the high altar, served a brilliant dual purpose. It allowed streams of pilgrims to flow around the sacred relics housed in the chapels of the Shevet, all without ever interrupting the sacred offices being sung in the choir. This was a physical code of hierarchy and access, a stone diagram of who could go where and how close they could get to the divine. Even the side chapels, each dedicated to a different saint, created a microgeography of sanctity. A worshipper could move from the chapel of St. John to the chapel of St. Anne, engaging in private devotion to a specific intercessor, while a baptism was happening in another corner and Mass was being celebrated at the main altar. The building was never a silent, static monument. It was a living, breathing participant in worship, its very corridors and chambers designed to direct the flow of human movement, to focus collective attention, and to embody the yearly rhythms of the church calendar from the penitence of Lent to the joy of Easter. This architectural choreography made the intangible truths of faith tangible, walking a path you could feel beneath your feet. And for the vast majority of people who could not read the words in a book, this functional coding for ritual was part of an even grander project, the cathedral's role as a massive, three-dimensional Bible carved from stone. A single glance at the royal portal of Chartres Cathedral could teach you the entire story of salvation. For the vast majority of people in the Middle Ages who could not read a single word, these stone pages were their Bible. This is the 19th hidden code, the cathedral as the Biblia Pauperum, the Bible of the poor. It was a massive, open-air book carved from limestone and illuminated by colored glass, designed to make the complex stories of faith instantly understandable to everyone. The entire facade was a visual encyclopedia, with its sculpted figures arranged in a precise theological hierarchy. On the right, you might see scenes from the life of Christ, while on the left, his ancestors from the Old Testament stood as prophetic witnesses. Above them all, Christ in majesty presided over the Last Judgment, offering a complete narrative arc from creation to apocalypse. As the art historian Émile Mail revealed, these sculptural programs were not random collections of statues. They followed intricate, established patterns that encoded the entirety of Christian doctrine into a universally accessible language. A peasant farmer, a wealthy merchant, or a traveling pilgrim, all could stand before these portals and receive the same fundamental instruction. They could learn the parables of Jesus by looking at the capitals, follow the trials of the martyrs in the stained glass windows, and understand the consequences of sin and virtue through the stark imagery of heaven and hell. This was architecture as a dynamic school of faith, a three-dimensional textbook where every pillar and every pane of glass had a lesson to teach. This transformative use of visual storytelling embedded a deep layer of narrative coding into the very walls, making the cathedral the most powerful educational tool of its age. Yet, within this orthodox teaching machine, the master masons and artists sometimes slipped in more personal and sometimes more covert ideas, leaving whispers of heterodox thought for those who knew how to look beyond the surface of the stone. Tucked away in a shadowy corner, a stone woman contorts her body, pulling open her vulva in an act of startling, explicit display. This is a Sheila Nogig, and her presence on a church wall is one of the most enigmatic and debated of all the hidden codes. The 20th code is the whisper of hidden heresies and subversive symbols, the suggestion that within the Orthodox stone Bible, individual masons or patrons carved subtle challenges to the very doctrine the building was meant to uphold. What was she doing there? To some scholars, she is a powerful pre-Christian fertility goddess, a symbol of life's raw, generative force that the Church could not fully erase and so absorbed, placing her in a marginal space as a talisman against evil. To others, she is a stark, misogynistic warning against the sins of the flesh, her shocking image meant to instill fear and repulsion. But there is another, more radical interpretation. Could she represent a hidden thread of a suppressed Gnostic belief, one that saw the divine not as entirely transcendent and male, but as immanent within the physical body and the feminine? She is not alone in her mystery. Look closely at certain geometric patterns interlacing like never-ending knots, and you might see the influence of Islamic art, absorbed through trade and crusade. Examine an unusual depiction of an Old Testament prophet, and you might detect the subtle hand of a Jewish illuminator's design, or a Mason familiar with their traditions. These are not necessarily declarations of open heresy, but quiet testaments to a world of cross-cultural exchange and personal belief that flowed beneath the surface of official doctrine. They hint that the cathedral wall was not just a monolith of orthodoxy, but a complex, layered canvas. In a time when expressing the wrong idea could lead to accusation and ruin, what safer place to encode a dangerous thought than in a holy building, hidden in plain sight among 10,000 other holy images? This possibility transforms these structures from perfect representations of a single faith into something far richer, a mosaic of individual human minds, each leaving a tiny, coded signature of their own unique worldview. The Templar Church in London is a perfect stone circle, a geometry of mystery that feels worlds apart from the soaring cross of a cathedral. This distinct design lies at the heart of the 21st Code, the web of legend linking the Knights Templar to the Gothic Revolution. The story goes that after the First Crusade, the Templars, stationed in Jerusalem, discovered something beneath the ruins of the Temple Mount. It was not a treasure of gold, but a treasure of knowledge, perhaps ancient architectural texts or lost geometrical secrets from the East that held the key to building the impossible. This rumored discovery coincides almost perfectly with the sudden, explosive spread of the Gothic style across Europe. While historians like Malcolm Barber point out there is no direct paper trail, no receipt from a Templar treasurer paying for a specific flying buttress, the circumstantial evidence is tantalizing. The Templars were one of the wealthiest and most powerful international networks of their time, and they were prolific builders of castles and, most tellingly, their unique round churches. These structures, like the Temple Church in London, were not copies of the Gothic cathedrals, but they shared a deep understanding of sophisticated stonework and sacred geometry. Could the Templars have acted as patrons, as quiet financiers who encouraged the fusion of Eastern knowledge with Western ambition? The legends suggest they were more than bankers, they were conduits, a secret society that guarded and transmitted a blueprint for spiritual and architectural transformation. This idea was powerfully amplified centuries later with the rise of Freemasonry. The Masons, drawing on the Romantic lore of the medieval stonemasons' guilds, looked at the Gothic cathedral and saw a mirror of their own beliefs. They adopted its core elements, the compass and square, the emphasis on geometry and light, and reinterpreted them as vessels for universal Masonic truths. In their view, the cathedral was not just a Christian statement, but a monument to the eternal principles of a secret brotherhood, its codes waiting to be read by those with the right initiation. This layered myth, whether historically precise or not, permanently encoded the Gothic style with an aura of esoteric knowledge. It suggests that the true power of these buildings was not just in their visible form, but in an invisible curriculum, a guarded knowledge passed from master to initiate. And it is this very narrative of hidden truths that now drives the most advanced scientific investigations, as we use modern tools to finally read the secret language these stones have held for centuries. A laser beam sweeps silently through the dim nave of a cathedral, painting its curves in a cloud of invisible data points. This is not science fiction, but the 20-second code, the application of contemporary technology to read the stone manuscript in a way our eyes never could. Archaeologists now use tools like 3D laser scanners, photogrammetry, and ground-penetrating radar to decode the secrets that centuries have obscured. They are mapping every millimeter, every subtle curve and fissure, to see the building not as a perfect, finished monument, but as a living document of its own long history. These digital eyes reveal distortions where foundations have settled over 800 years, showing us the building's slow, graceful dance with the earth. They can pinpoint exactly where flying buttresses were added decades after the initial construction, a silent admission that the first builders had pushed their designs to the very edge. They can even peer beneath layers of whitewash to resurrect the ghostly outlines of lost wall paintings, forgotten colors returning as a digital echo. The tragic fire at Notre Dame de Paris, for instance, led to one of the most comprehensive scanning projects ever undertaken. The resulting data set is a virtual cathedral, an unprecedented record that allows historians to verify long-held theories about medieval construction sequences and the precise application of those sacred geometric codes. This scientific decoding process is a new chapter in an ancient story. It proves that these stone giants are not closed books, but that their pages are still turning, their secrets still yielding to our curiosity. This high-tech investigation brings us full circle, allowing us to appreciate the sheer brilliance and enduring legacy of these coded masterpieces with a clarity the original builders could never have imagined. The ghost of the Gothic cathedral walks among us, not in stone but in titanium and glass. Look at the impossible, organic curves of Antoni Gaudi's Sagrada Familia, a structure that seems to grow from the earth like a petrified forest. Its columns branch like trees to support the ceiling, a direct and conscious echo of the ribbed vaults that turned stone into a skeletal frame 800 years earlier. This is the 23rd hidden code, the enduring legacy of Gothic principles in the DNA of modern architecture. The medieval rejection of the heavy, solid box in favor of a dynamic, expressive skeleton prefigured our own explorations of form following force. Just as the flying buttress honestly expressed the transfer of structural loads, so too do the sweeping, exposed beams in a building by Santiago Calatrava. Calatrava explicitly channels the Gothic fusion of engineering and spiritual aspiration, creating structures that are marvels of physics while also feeling like prayers made of steel and light. This is not about copying a style, but about continuing a philosophy, the hidden code of making the structure itself beautiful and meaningful, of using light as a primary building material, and of embedding symbolic narrative into form. These are the gifts the Gothic masters left for the future. Today's architects use computational design and parametric modeling to create forms of breathtaking complexity, shapes that would be impossible to calculate by hand. Yet this digital process is a direct conceptual descendant of the medieval mason's tracing floor, where a master mason used a compass and string to work out the full-scale geometry of a vault. A modern architect uses algorithms to optimize the shape of a curving wall. Both are using the most advanced tools of their day to translate a visionary idea into a buildable reality. The goal remains the same: to create buildings that are more than mere shelter, that stir the human spirit and speak to our deepest aspirations. From the deconstructivist shapes of Frank Gehry's Guggenheim Museum bow to the soaring, light-filled atriums of contemporary skyscrapers, the conversation that began in the 12th century is still unfolding. The codes were never locked in the past. They are a living language, and we are still learning how to speak it. Walk through the low, rounded archway of a Romanesque church, and you enter a different world entirely. The air is cool and still. The light is dim, filtering through small, deep-set windows, and the massive walls give you the overwhelming sense of being inside a mountain, a fortress for the soul. This architectural language speaks of a God who is a mighty protector and a stern judge, a refuge from a dangerous and uncertain world. Then step into the nave of a Gothic cathedral. Your eyes are instantly pulled upward by soaring lines, and the space is flooded with a kaleidoscope of colored light from immense windows. The message here is utterly transformed. This God is not found in shadow but in luminous revelation, a divine architect whose universe operates on principles of harmony and grace that the human mind can, through sacred geometry, begin to comprehend. The very shape of the arch tells this story. The Romanesque rounded arch is stable, earthbound, echoing the curve of the horizon. The Gothic pointed arch is an arrow, a gesture of dynamic ascent, straining toward the infinite. This was more than an aesthetic competition. It was a fundamental shift in how a society envisioned its relationship with the divine. The earlier Romanesque code emphasized God's awesome power and the need for human penance within a protective stronghold. The Gothic code, born from a more confident and intellectually curious age, emphasized God's love, the beauty of creation, and the possibility of a personal, mystical encounter with that divine light. By placing these two architectural languages side by side, we see the Gothic Revolution for what it was, a conscious and breathtakingly bold act of recoding the sacred. It sought to build not a fortress against the world, but a bridge between earth and heaven, using light, line, and number to make the celestial feel intimately close. This profound shift in architectural intent was not just theological, it was deeply psychological, designed to orchestrate a very specific and transformative experience for everyone who walked through its doors. You step across the threshold, and the world outside simply falls away. The sheer volume of the space above you is the first overwhelming sensation, a cavern of stone so immense it seems to swallow sound and light. Your own body feels suddenly profoundly small. This visceral reaction is not a side effect of the architecture, it is its entire purpose. The 25th hidden code is this engineered psychological impact, a deliberate orchestration of awe, humility, and the sublime. Every element you have learned about conspires to create this single, transformative feeling. The soaring vertical lines of the pillars pull your gaze and your spirit relentlessly upward, while the intricate carvings and distant stained glass remind you of a complexity far beyond human comprehension. The light does not simply illuminate, it descends in colored shafts, a tangible substance that feels both mysterious and holy. Even the acoustics contribute, where a whisper can become a ghostly echo, making you feel that the very air is alive with presence. Philosophers of the 18th century would later name this feeling the sublime, that strange mix of terror and delight we experience when confronted with something vast, powerful, and beautiful that utterly transcends us. The Gothic master builders understood this concept intuitively centuries earlier. Their goal was to use architecture to bypass the logical mind and speak directly to the soul. They wanted to create an environment where a person could not help but feel the majesty of the divine, and in doing so, recognize their own place within a grand cosmic order. Modern environmental psychology now confirms what these builders achieved. Studies show that exposure to vast, aesthetically profound spaces can measurably shift our mental state, quieting the ego and promoting feelings of connection to something greater than ourselves. It can reduce stress and increase a sense of wonder and transcendence. The cathedral was, in essence, a meticulously calibrated machine for generating spiritual experience. It used geometry to create harmony, light to evoke revelation, and scale to instill humility, all guiding the visitor toward a specific, transformative psychological state. This intended effect on the human spirit is perhaps the most profound and enduring code of all. It is why these spaces continue to resonate with visitors today, regardless of their personal faith, speaking a silent, universal language of awe that anyone can understand. The very air that surrounds these cathedrals now threatens to erase them. Each droplet of acid rain slowly dissolves the intricate carvings, and centuries of structural fatigue create hairline fractures in the stone. This ongoing battle against time and the elements is the 26th hidden code, the modern challenge of preservation. We are now the stewards of these stone encyclopedias, tasked with a monumental puzzle: how to protect the original builders' coded messages without obscuring them with our own hand. The tools we use are our own set of modern keys. Conservators employ delicate laser cleaning to vaporize centuries of black soot and pollution from the delicate stone surfaces without touching the original material. They analyze the chemical composition of ancient mortars to mix historically accurate repairs. Engineers use sophisticated computer models to simulate the immense loads and stresses, pinpointing exactly where a hidden flying buttress needs reinforcement or where a vault is under silent, invisible strain. The devastating fire at Notre Dame de Paris in 2019 was a global tragedy, but it also became an unprecedented act of restoration archaeology. As the rubble was sifted through, archaeologists discovered construction techniques and material choices that had been hidden from view for 800 years. The catastrophe forced a new, profound dialogue with the medieval masons, revealing their problem-solving in moments of crisis. This modern work of preservation is far more than simple repair. It is a conversation across time, a way of using our most advanced technology to honor and protect their ancient genius. It is our commitment to ensuring that the silent sermons encoded in geometry, light, and stone are not lost to the future. By deciphering this code of time, we acknowledge that these buildings are not relics of a dead past, but living libraries of human aspiration, and we have a profound responsibility to keep their pages open for generations yet to come. These stone giants are not silent, they are simply speaking in a language of light and line that we have almost forgotten. Our journey through their hidden codes reveals them as the great syntheses of human endeavor, where faith met physics and ambition married artistry. They are layered texts written not on parchment but in limestone and leaded glass, their pages open to anyone who learns how to read. We have traced the sacred geometry that mapped the cosmos, the structural secrets that defied gravity, and the symbolic carvings that taught profound lessons to a waiting world. This was not merely a new style of building, but a new purpose for architecture itself. It transformed stone from a mere enclosure into an embodied philosophy, a space designed not just to shelter the body, but to elevate the soul. The true legacy of these codes is not confined to the past. It whispers to us from the soaring atriums of modern museums and the skeletal frames of our most ambitious bridges, a timeless challenge to build with meaning. The next time you walk into any building that makes you catch your breath, that fills you with a sense of wonder or peace, pause for a moment, look closer. You are standing inside a code, a hidden language of space that shapes how you feel and think. Which of these ancient secrets resonated most deeply with you? Share your thoughts below, and if you enjoyed this journey into the mysteries etched in stone, subscribe for more. History's greatest wonders are always waiting, just beneath the surface, for a curious mind to discover them.